Hey gang, welcome to the shop. I'm Dusty, and this is DustyBuilds, and today we're going to look at a new desk. I was browsing around on Instagram and found this great company just down the road in Nashville called Austin Inc. You should check them out. Definitely check them out. They're doing some outstanding work. But I liked sort of the design that they were doing with mixing metal and wood on a lot of projects. But one in particular, just a normal desk that had sort of a modern look with steel legs in sort of like a C and just a really nice top. And I decided, man, that would be a really fun project here to kick off the videos here at DustyBuilds.com and on our YouTube. So we're going to get started today. I've just drawn up a variation on their plan using some different types of steel, and I'm going to get started on it today. Okay, so to get started, I wanted to draw everything out. I always like to take some graph paper and just sort of sketch the idea so I can get a really good idea of measurements ahead of time and exactly what materials I need and how I should split my materials up. So I started with 40 feet of steel that I bought at the local steel plant, and had them, because I couldn't carry 20-foot sticks, I had them cut it into 10-foot sticks. So I've got 4 10-foot sticks. So I drew everything out for the idea, and I've done the calculations to figure out how much I need to cut for each one. So I'm going to go ahead and mark all the steel, and we'll cut it and get it ready, and then we can start welding things together. Okay, got the first stick marked, got my safety gear, and we're going to go ahead and get these cut, get the rest marked and cut, and then I'll show you kind of how I'm going to lay it out and put things together. Okay, I've got most of the steel cut for the desk. The main frame, I'm going to wait and see how it holds together once we get everything welded to check on some rigidity for the design variation on the design that I saw on the Austin page. And the main frame is here, and the important thing is when you're cutting steel on a chop saw like that, you get these little pieces of slag on the end. Slag's probably not the right word, but just little slivers of steel, and they are razor sharp, and they will ruin your afternoon. So I like to immediately, anytime I cut something with the chop saw, I like to go straight to the bench grinder and just grind all that off. But then also I like to go ahead and put a little V, kind of an edge all the way around. Because when I weld things together, it's nice to have that V. I'm not professionally trained as a welder, but the fellow that took some time to show me how to weld told me that that's always important. So I can't tell you the science, but I know that it works way better when I do it that way and get it all cleaned up. So let's clean up some steel. All right. Turns out my old welding helmet, Harbor Freight Special, had batteries in it that were supposed to be solar powered, but it had batteries in it that were never meant to be replaced. So thankfully I tested it before I burned my retinas and found out I needed another helmet. So quick trip to Rural King, and now I'm high speed. Got my nice racing stripe helmet here, and it does have replaceable batteries. So hopefully I won't ever have to buy another helmet again. Just batteries. So I've got the frame laid out here for one side of the desk, and let's melt some metal. There we go. Took me a minute to get my welding sea legs back there. I don't do a whole lot of welding. I'm not, as I said, professionally trained, but it's together and it shouldn't come back apart. So let's do the other side. Alright, that one's not the prettiest. But we have legs. Alright gang, we're back. Got some help here during the break to put the top, to hold the top on while I welded it. and I realized that it's really shaky. There's just not enough structural rigidity to this 16 gauge steel. I thought that might be a problem, but I kind of hoped that it wouldn't be a problem. So what I've done is I've cut these corner pieces to add a little style to this thing and function. So I'm just going to weld these guys right there like that. So I decided to call an audible on the Peruvian walnut and save that for another project. But I remembered running across a design earlier in the week that reminded me of a video game I used to play, and I really liked the way they incorporated this sort of technological theme with the honeycombs, and so I decided it would be a neat accent to add that to the pine that I decided to use. So I ran those through my Shapeoko XXL and added those in, and then ordered some new mica dust to hopefully do some really cool designs with resin of different colors. So let's see how that turns out. So I've got the base of the table all painted, welded up. It's actually behind the camera there doing its thing, drying. And I've got my inlays that I decided I wanted to do with the beehive cut in the bottom piece. And so now I need to join all of this and get it glued and started to dry so that I can get it sanded down and finished and get to the next step. So what I like to do to connect these, obviously as a biscuit joiner, but I like to just take a pencil and mark kind of semi-randomly where those are going to be. So let's do it here. There's probably like a really good reason to do these in a very specific way, and I do not know that reason, but I will endeavor to find out at some point. I've got some really good books that I want to make time to read, and I'm sure they have the answers to those questions inside. But for now, this has been working for me just fine. And that'll just help me get everything lined up. Cool. So now, I'm just stack these puppies and start biscuiting. At least cutting biscuits. This Ryobi biscuit joiner does a fantastic job. Good job, Ryobi. I like your tool. So with those cut, I like to just take a little screwdriver like that and just pull out all the shavings to get ready for gluing. And I'll clean this table up and get some clamps out. So like most of my projects, I've been kind of doing this one by ear. I didn't know that a lot of this stuff was going to happen. It was going to be in the project, but that's part of what makes it fun for me. Spontaneity, a little adventure. Mostly I'm just used to screwing up most of the things that I lay my hands on, and so I've just learned to kind of roll with it. Most of the time that turns out pretty cool. Gonna need a little sanding, to be expected. That will do just fine. All right, now that that's all glued and clamped, I can let it dry and go drink whiskey. And then when I come back, I can sand the wee-wee out of it, make it look pretty, and maybe even up these edges just a little bit, just make it nice and square and all that. And then we can start putting the finish on. And I should have the dye for my epoxy tomorrow. And we'll be able to start mixing that. I want to test it first to make sure it's going to look like I hope it does. Then we can start pouring that and making it look pretty, and then get it on the old frame over there and get it into place. I need to build the keyboard drawer as well, so we'll start on that. So let's wait and let this dry, and then I'll be back to get started on that. Okay, so the tabletop's all glued up, got my honeycombs cut in there, and I have taken the belt sander to it already to even out places where it didn't line up. Anywhere I needed to take big chunks out, I just used that belt sander and just wore it out. That was really boring, so I didn't video that. And now I've got just a little orbital sander, and I'm going to go over the edges and just make sure it's got a real nice finish before I pull out the stain and get to work on that. So the plan is to stain the whole thing in this really, really dark stain, almost black. I guess it is sort of a shiny-ish black, and then come back in with some gold epoxy and fill in these honeycombs to make a really cool design, almost like old video game I used to play called Deus Ex. Really, really neat. I liked what they were doing with the honeycombs, and I thought it might really bring this thing out. So let's take the sander to the sides of these things, make sure it's nice and clean, and we can get started on the staining. I only recently learned that sawdust is really bad for you, and they make masks and everything. So now I've got one, and I wear it, and I look like someone from Mortal Kombat. Excellent. Okay, so I flipped this thing over, and I just did some spray paint and some dark spray paint on the bottom. Don't really care, because nobody's ever going to see the bottom. It's going to be attached. And I did a little test swatch of the new stain on a piece of wood similar to this, and it looks like I'm going to need 2 coats. So we're going to go ahead and get started on that first coat and lay it on. It's a new type of stain I've never used before. It's really jelly, like really thick stuff. So who knows? It may not turn out too awesome, but you know, we'll give it a shot and see what happens. Yeah, I'm not worried about this, but we'll trust you, Minwax. We'll trust you. So help me, if you mess this up, I'll just do it again. Okay, then it says, wait 3 minutes and remove the excess stain with a clean cloth. Okay. To you, the viewers, both of you. Clean cloth, huh? Okay, that looks pretty cool. It's just the end grain, but it looks pretty stinking cool. I need a bigger cloth. Oh yeah. All the cloths. Okay, that doesn't look bad at all. I think I'm going to be okay with this. I'll probably do a second coat, because I really want it to be shiny. Okay. Fears assuaged. Sorry for ever doubting you, Minwax. get some of that Rubio stuff and try it, man. Because if this looks that good, I have a feeling that Rubio stuff would really have made this project explode. It's gonna look good. I wrote that just now. Rock and roll. Rock and roll hoochie coo, man. That's gonna need another touch up. Sweet. Well, that says it needs to dry for 6 to 8 hours, and then I'll do another coat. I think after the second coat, if I can do the second coat tomorrow really quick, then this will be really shiny, and then I can get ready for the epoxy later on this week when it arrives, and do a clear coat on it, and this thing will be ready to attach to the base and then get placed in the office. I'm excited about working on this thing. I do still need to build the keyboard tray. That's coming up, so we'll get everything placed before we start that, though. So let's let this thing dry. All right, so we're getting pretty close on the desk build. I've got the top stained, put together. I put a little bit of a clear coat on this after I did a test pour of the epoxy with the coloring, and it really seeped into the wood a little bit more than I'd like. So I'm hoping that putting just a little bit of spray poly in these will help keep that from seeping into the wood and look a little bit better. And I didn't video the first test because I was certain it was going to go terribly. But it actually went really, really well. So, and I learned a lot. And essentially what I'm just using this stuff I got from Amazon. Tabletop epoxy is a 2-part epoxy. And then I bought this mica dust also from Amazon. It was fairly inexpensive in a gold and a blue. And originally I was just going to do gold. But after I saw how good the gold looked, I really think it'll be neat to mix in some blue and kind of alternate it a little bit, like it's kind of growing out. I don't know. We're going to play with it and see. Okay, so I went with 200 instead of 250, but it was hard to tell. So that means we're going to take it just short of 400. Oh, that's way too much. We're going to have quite a bit. Actually, because I've poured too much, I'm going to do blue instead of the gold again, because I'm going to use more blue than I am going to use gold. And it'll give us a chance to see what the blue looks like. Probably should have done that in the first place. Serendipity. So this stuff is just a really fine powder as well, which is neat. I guess it dissolves in there, or maybe it just, I don't know. I don't know what happens. Something happens, and it looks pretty cool. Gonna dump what I think is a reasonable amount of this blue in there. Maybe I'll go a little more than reasonable, so it's really nice and pretty. Then you have to stir this stuff for, I think it says on the directions, forever. You have to stir it forever. No, I'm just kidding. It's 7 minutes. You have to stir it 7 minutes. And normally it would start to get white, and then it would go back to clear. But since I've just turned mine blue, it's going to start blue and stay blue. Wow, that is gorgeous. Look at this. I don't know if you can see that color. But that is flat, beautiful. Also, to save myself confusion and from doing something silly, I pre-marked all of these with a Y or a B for yellow, blue. The other thing that I did mess up on the first test pour is I put way too much in these little indentions. Like that's like 1/8 of an inch, and I was kind of hoping that it'd get this little meniscus and that it would make it like stand up, right? It would look kind of cool, maybe almost like you know, a raised platform thing you could put your arm on or put things on, and it, you know, wouldn't hurt, wouldn't be abrasive. But that was not what happened at all. Instead, it just ran over and tried to like move out like the blob. The meniscus thing did not work, I guess, because I just put too much. So I'm going to endeavor on these not to put too much. But I was really happy with the bubbles. We'll talk about the bubbles in a minute, but I just used a plain old heat gun, Harbor Freight Special, to do that and take that bubbles out, and it worked great. It looks good. So I think this is a really good consistency for this now, and it's absolutely gorgeous, man. I could not be happier with that color, unless maybe it was even more awesome than blue. But I guess I could just dump that whole thing in there, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. So let's do this. All right, the other thing I've done is I bought these syringes to ease the pour itself. And so technically I should be able just to drop this sucker down there and pull up. And dig. The doctor will see you now. Okay. It's really hard to see these, but that's absolutely. I'm really impressed with myself right now. Even though I'm sure there's probably 1,000 people that have already done this and have done really cool things with it, I'm super happy with myself right now. So this is extremely satisfying. Pouring epoxy. I've messed up more with a spoon than you can fix with a shovel with epoxy, but it is so fun to work with. That last guy right there, I think I put way too much in. So I'm gonna pull some of that out with the syringe as well. And see if I can save myself some heartache later. Oh yeah, hopefully that was enough. And do one quick repair and we can move to the other side. Then I'll have to find something to do with the rest of this blue, man, because it's gorgeous. I don't know what I'm going to be able to build real quick to put this in, but geez whiz, it looks so good. All right. Oh, bummer. My first mistake. Almost made my second one. See if we can get that dried up before it becomes a problem. Oh yeah. No problem at all. No problemo. Dude, that looks so good. That looks so good. I'm gonna see if I can get you close here. You can kind of see how that turned out. And I'll come back and get those bubbles. The blue epoxy turned out great. It's gorgeous. It's dry. It dried this morning, or overnight rather. However, it did seep into the wood around the outside, just like the one over here that I was disappointed with. So I thought, hey, I'll just run a sander over it, right? It's lower, like the epoxy's lower than the rest of the wood, so I'll just run the sander over, take the seepage out, and then I'll just touch up with the stain. Well, that was a terrible idea. Well, it wasn't a terrible idea, but I didn't realize what I was getting myself into. What I actually did was the sanding pad did seep down in some places and hit the high points on the blue, which essentially made it just ugly as homemade sin. So I did a little Googling to figure out if there was any way I could fix that so I don't have to scrap this and do it again. And a few places suggested that I could just get a higher grit sandpaper like what you use for auto body work. So I made a quick trip down to the local Auto Zone, which was just down the street, and snagged some really fine sandpaper. So I'm going to attempt to bust this stuff open and give it a shot on these, the ones that are essentially ruined right now. And hopefully it fixes it, but if it doesn't, I'll just cut this off and we'll do it again. And I'll use what I've learned from my mistakes to make it even better until I get it right. So let's give this a shot. Come on, people now. Smile on your brother. Oh, that looks terrible. Well, you know, I said I needed experience, and this is how you get it. By screwing up about half of everything that you touch, at least in my case. But all is not lost. I do want to try a couple more things. A, an even higher grit sandpaper. And B, that fancy buffer I got at the Tractor Supply. I'm determined to try to save this thing before I start over. But you know what they say, Kenny Rogers would say, you gotta know when to hold them, know when to fold them. So let's give this a shot, and if this doesn't work after that fancy buffer, then it's time to go plan B, which is fold them. And start again. Okay, as always, the Googles delivers, and it turns out I'm an idiot, and right on the thing it says wet, dry sandpaper, and I just assumed that was like an option, but I guess it was not, because I dashed a little water on this stuff and sanded it back again, and everywhere it was wet was just gorgeous. Now as it dried, it got this little haze again, but I believe that I'll be able to get some polish and like one of those mother's wheels or something like that that you use to buff out scratches on a car, and should be able to maybe put a little wax in these and get them to be shiny and pretty again. I don't know that for a fact, but that's the contingency I'm going to run with for the time being as I wet sand the rest of these down. And then I'm going to take another gamble that is that I can just go back with that the stain again and try to be really careful and get the stain back into these grooves. And who knows, that might seep into the resin as well, and then we'll just, you know, start over and do this different next time. I think if I were doing this again this moment, if I were starting this project now with the information that I had, or everything I've got now, I probably would have made these deeper, the holes deeper. They're about 1/8 of an inch deep right now. And I probably would have made them like 1/4 of an inch deep, and then filled, you know, sprayed some kind of the clear coat or something in there to sort of seal it beforehand, and then filled them not all the way full. I probably would have filled them like 1/4 of the way full, and or about halfway full of the 1/4 inch. And then I probably would have just put clear epoxy on the whole tabletop afterwards. That way the whole thing is one level. It would have been almost impossible for me to screw up, and I still would have gotten the same neat little design, but also would have had the benefit of everything being, you know, smooth, the same level. And, you know, I've got a keyboard tray that's underneath it, so it's not like I'm ever going to really be setting things there. And it was just to be pretty, as it were, and unique. So, like me. So anyway, we're going to keep sanding away at this. And we're going to try it. Hey, that's how you learn. That's how you learn. So, next step, we'll dry this thing off. I'll put the polish back to it again, rather the stain, and hope we don't find ourselves completely broken. All right, staining take 2. Begin. Here's hoping. Oop, there that is. Give it a few moments. Oh, that's really cool. Okay, let's see what lies beneath. What fresh hell waits for us. That even, if this doesn't get fixed at all, this alone looks stinking cool. So I'm okay with this experiment. Wow, that looks neat. All right, let's see about polishing some. Oh yeah, that worked really well. Pretty cool though. I'm gonna get some wax and try to buff those suckers, and I think we'll be good to go. That looks cool. I still like it. I still like this. So here we are in my office. As you can see, the desk is in place and completed. I cleaned up the stain a little bit, put another clear coat on there, and it just turned out really good. So the only problems I should have done, I should have measured a little bit better when I was putting together the base, because as I found bringing it up the stairs, it didn't fit through any doors nor the stairwell. So as soon as I got it to a good place, which is the top of the stairs, I ended up having to use a grinder to cut off part of the part of the base so that it would fit the rest of the way into the office. The other thing that I ran into from not measuring is the keyboard tray, which I ended up cutting it out of the video entirely because I couldn't use it, so I took it off the desk. I've got a little elliptical that I use under my desk as I work during the day, and my knees were hitting the tray, and it just wasn't going to work, so I took it out of there. But otherwise, I put my makeshift monitor stand over there, and it's very, very comfortable. I can lean back in my chair and work. It's more comfortable than my previous setup, so I've really been enjoying it this week. So as a matter of fact, I enjoyed it so much that I couldn't leave well enough alone, and just on Friday and Saturday, I spent some more time building a second desk for my non-work PC for video games and YouTube and various things that I do with that. So, and now, just 45-degree angle, I can just slide over and work on the other computer whenever is necessary. Well, that concludes this project, my very first video for the YouTube channel and my website, DustyBuilds.com. Thank you all for tuning in. It was a ton of fun. I learned a lot, messed up a lot, but I like to think that I learned more than I messed up. So make sure and subscribe to the videos, and I hope to try to put some out as often as I can. Obviously, I have a full-time job, can't do this all the time, but when I do work on little projects, I do intend to video them and include them on the page. So please, again, subscribe, and in the comments, make sure and leave any pointers, suggestions, anything I could do, maybe project ideas you think would be cool to see me make videos of. Thanks, and we'll see you again next time.